Hi, everyone. So glad that you are joining us. We're going to just take a minute or two before we begin to get everyone in. Oh, it's so great to see all these people. So I'm Elise McVeigh, and I'll get into who I am and my background and everything as we're getting more people in. So I'm just really excited that everyone is here today. So I will start by sharing my screen. So you are in a presentation called 8 Manners Teens and Parents Should Know. So I'm Elise McVeigh of Elise McVeigh's Life Camp and Mrs. McVeigh's Manners. So today we're going to take an hour or so to learn about 8 manners that every teen and parents should know. So we have a lot of information to get to in 1 hour. So one of my team members will put my email in the chat. So you're able to email me any questions that you may have, because I don't know if we'll be able to get to them during the presentation. So feel free just to write them down and we'll let you know how to get them answered. But before I launch in, let me give you a little bio for those of you who do not know me. So I started Elise McVeigh's Life Camp seminar in 2001, and me and my staff speak to young adults, parents, and professionals about etiquette. 2003, from a suggestion from a parent during a speech, I started Mrs. McVeigh's Manners, which is a children's manners school. Originally, I was a journalist, and I wrote a manners advice column for the Dallas Morning News for 10 years. I've written a book for adults on teaching your children manners. So I do a lot of media appearances internationally, because not a lot of people teach younger people manners in the fun and interactive way that we do. So the Mrs. McVeigh's Manners and Elise McVeigh's Life Camp curriculum, we have about 65 different lessons. And for each age group that we teach, which is age 3 through adults, the information obviously gets more detailed. So here you see a picture of me with my family. I included that because I wanted to show you that I have children of my own. And between my own children and manners business, I have a lot of experience in teaching manners. All right, so students, why are manners important? Well, they're important because if you don't have good manners, then you're going to feel very uncomfortable in a lot of different situations. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if you don't have good manners and social skills, you won't be able to get into the school that you want to, the job that you want to, or choose the friends that you'd like to have. So today I'm going to give you 8 manners that you should know. There are obviously a lot more than 8, but we chose the ones that we think are the most important for teens. And parents, please know that you do not have to feel alone in teaching and enforcing good manners. I'm now your new best friend, and I'll give you some resources that we have to make your job a lot easier. So the teens watching this, just like you might have school tutors, think of me as a manners tutor. And you might be thinking, oh, I don't want to listen to some lady go on about having good manners. Boring. But I promise you, I will make this as painless as possible. I always have students your age come into my classes saying, I thought this was going to be dreadful, but I actually had fun. So think about it this way. If you know the rules and expectations of a situation, then you'll feel so much more comfortable and confident. It's like playing a sport or game. How can you feel good playing and win if you don't know the rules? And parents, the reason we included you in this presentation is because there are probably some manners that you can learn too. We have several generations of people who have not been sitting down as a family together every night to eat dinner. So people have missed out on learning table manners and other life lessons that were traditionally taught by the adults in their lives. All right, so thank you for trying to have fun for the next hour. So here we go. The 8 manners teens and parents should know. So the lessons that we're going to cover today include meeting and greeting, acknowledging people, conversations, being a good listener, table manners, restaurant manners, electronic device etiquette, and email etiquette. All right, number 1, meeting and greeting. So when we meet adults for the first time, we look into their eyes, have a firm handshake, and say, hi, I am Elise McVeigh. Nice to meet you. After the adult tells you his name, such as Bill Smith, you can say, nice to meet you, Mr. Smith. We always call adult by his last name with whatever his title is. And that includes, when I say him, I also mean her. So whatever title a person has, Mr., Mrs., Dr., Ms., Miss, whatever they would like to be called, make sure that you use that title followed by their last name. So 3 things to remember when meeting for the people for the first time. Stand up straight and tall, using a firm handshake, good eye contact, and a clear and loud enough voice. So if you've met the adult before, then we can say the same thing, except nice to see you, Mr. Smith or Dr. Smith, instead of nice to meet you. So what do we do if we see an adult we know? Well, for example, you're getting out of the car in the school carpool line and your principal's standing outside. Do you say hello or do you ignore them? Well, you need to say hello. So shaking hands is a great thing to do in this situation. If you're at a friend's house, always greet the adult who's at home. So what are some other times that we should shake hands with people? Well, how about after a lesson of some sort? Maybe it's a coach or the music teacher or whoever it is. You can shake their hand and say thank you. So what if you see someone you know that you've met before and you can't recall their name? So what I do is I walk up to the person, put out my hand and say, "Hi, Elise McVeigh, good to see you again." This hopefully will alert the person that you don't remember their name and they'll reintroduce themselves. Even if I do remember someone's name, but I'm not sure if they remember mine, then I reintroduce myself in that way. So what do you do if you need to introduce 2 people and you can't remember one or both names? Well, it just happens to all of us. Even if it's our best friend, everyone gets so nervous when they have to introduce people. So I always say something like, "Oh, have you 2 met or do you know one another?" Or if I know at least one person's name, I'll say to the person I can't remember the name, "Have you ever met my husband, Daniel?" This way the person will then be prompted to introduce themselves. All right, so after this presentation, I would love for you to practice your meeting and greeting. And students, you can have fun and critique your adult when you role play. And it's a great thing to practice. All right, so is there ever a time that we should not shake a person's hand? Absolutely. If you have something that might be contagious, such as when we all were worried about COVID-19, and it's actually still around, always will be. If you have a cold, the flu, if you think the other person could have something, this is a time that you definitely do not want to shake someone's hand. So how do we politely tell them that we don't want to shake their hand? Well, before the person even offers their hand, you could walk up as you start speaking, sort of put your hands, behind your back, or you can just sort of go like this. You can say, "Hi, I'm Elise McVeigh. I'd love to shake your hand, but I'm going to keep my distance. It's flu season." The other person can then introduce themselves by saying their first and last name. But if you're too late and the person has already put out their hand, you could just say, "Excuse me for not shaking hands, but I might have a cold and I don't want you to catch it." This will make the situation less uncomfortable and more safe. So when you do shake hands with someone, wash your hands as soon as possible afterwards, but using like hand sanitizer in front of the person right after, it might seem insulting to them. So I would make sure that you do all this when the person really isn't noticing. So 3 things to remember when meeting or greeting people: have good posture and good eye contact, firm handshake, and a clear and loud enough voice. All right, next one, acknowledging people. All right, so have you ever met someone new, you really like them, and then they ignore you the next time you see them? Well, that's how adults sort of feel when you don't say hi to them. So for example, your school principal, once again, stands outside every day before school. It's cold, it's hot. They just want to say hi to their students in the morning. Think about how he or she feels, if you and your friend just sort of walk by and don't even say hi. So I know you'd rather talk to your friend about what you did last night, video game, TV show, whatever, but it's bad manners to ignore people. So we need to acknowledge people we know when we see them. And the word acknowledge means that you're recognizing that you've met the person and that you know them. So when you see someone especially an adult, you need to act as if you do see them. Say hello and make small talk. So what's small talk? Talking about simple things such as the weather, sports, what the person's wearing, or how their day is going. So do you ever feel sort of shy around adults? That's okay. Just keep on practicing speaking to adults. It'll become more natural. Think of something simple to say before you walk up to them. So what's something you could say? You could say, "Hi, Mrs. Smith, how are you today?" You want to smile, make good eye contact, really impress them by shaking hands. What other times do you need to do this? Well, when you go to a friend's house, you see your friend's parents. We talked about a sports practice, shake the coach's hand and say thank you. Walking through the hallway at school, say hi to people you're passing. Anytime you see someone just walk up and say hello. So in conclusion, 3 things to remember about acknowledging people. 1, always go up to someone acting like you don't see the person's rude. Shake hands and say hello, and try to make small talk, even if it's for like 30 seconds. All right, number 3, conversations. Being a good conversationalist, it means not only knowing what to say to people, but being a good listener. So a lot of these lessons are just sort of overlapping, as you'll see. So here's what good conversationalists are good at. They have good eye contact. They don't look around, down, like they're looking at you. A clear and articulate voice. Good posture. I'm going to mention this again and again. Everyone is leaning over, looking at their devices. Also, think before speaking. People who are good conversationalists really think it through. And why do I say that? Because if you don't, you're going to have extra words that I call justifiers. They're like made up words. Pretty much, kinda, gonna, et cetera, et cetera. So it is important not to know those. Okay. Or not to say them. All right. So why do you think some people aren't very good conversationalists? So we sort of mentioned this. It could be the person gets nervous around adults, peers. Some, once again, say they're shy, but a lot, they just simply don't know what to say to people that they just meet, barely know, or maybe, an adult, they're older than you. So whatever your reason is, if you're not a great conversationalist, here's some things to consider. So once again, start with small talk. What did we say small talk is? Small talk, topics that anyone can discuss, such as the weather. If you struggle with small talk, try to find an interest of someone. You can do this by, looking around their house, office, car. Oh, I see a picture of you fishing. How often do you fish? What got you interested in fishing? Think of how you know the person. Is it a friend's mom or dad? Ask them about, your friend playing sports, instrument, whatever their hobby is. Ask about the other kids in the family. Let's say that you're at a party for your friend Jane. You could say, "Oh, how do you know Jane?" to the other guests. Also, you want to have a balanced conversation. So what is balance? Well, that means that both people talk about the same amount of time. Also, conversations, there are things to discuss and not discuss, especially during a meal. So things we don't want to discuss. Politics, religion, topics that are hard to stomach, such as we dissected a frog in biology today. Oh my God, its guts got all over the place and we cut it open. Anything to do with the bathroom, things that you probably don't want to discuss in any situation. So what would be some appropriate topics of discussion, especially at mealtime? How was your day? Things that everyone would enjoy. Maybe people at the table love sports. Maybe they love movies, TV series that you're watching, current events, if they're not political or upsetting, your extracurricular activities, their extracurricular activities. All right, so another role-playing opportunity that you can do after this talk is to practice having an engaging conversation with your adult, okay? So I want you to have a balanced conversation. Adults, you could probably time it for, let's say, 5 minutes. It needs to go back and forth where both people are giving information. You don't want to do all the talking or all the listening. Remember, students, ask people questions about themselves. People love talking about themselves. This is your chance to make them think you're a great conversationalist by asking them the right questions. So in conclusion, 3 things to remember about conversations. Have good posture and eye contact. Think about what you're going to say so you don't have to use justifiers, those extra words such as and ask people questions about themselves, meaning have a balanced conversation. Next, good listener. So there are a lot of situations that we have to be a good listener. So let's think of some examples of when you have to be a good listener. So this is what I came up with. When a teacher's talking to you or the class, when your parents are talking to you, when someone's giving you instructions on how to do something, when you're having a conversation with anyone, school announcements, announcements and safety instructions on an airplane, when a friend is telling you a story or a problem. Sometimes it's hard to be a good listener. So when do we have a hard time listening to people? When we're tired, we're bored, we're not interested in the topic, when we have other things that we cannot stop thinking about. I know it can be hard. But what are some nonverbal ways that we can look like we're being a good listener? Well, making good eye contact, nodding at the person. We want to smile if appropriate. I mean, really listen. I've given people bad news and they're smiling. And I'm thinking, okay, did you not hear that I just said, my dog died? Why? You're just thinking like, why are you smiling at me? So really listen. And also you can ask questions when you're sure that they're done speaking. So when someone's speaking, what's a common mistake that the person who's supposed to be listening does? They interrupt them. It's a big thing. There's some people who just interrupt people all the time. So to make sure that you don't interrupt someone, you can always, okay, this is something we always told our kids, count to 5 in your head before you speak to make sure the person is done talking. So when we would sit around the dinner table, if everyone would complain, I don't want to sit at the table, I want to sit in the kitchen on the bar stool. No, we're going to the table. And then we couldn't get our 3 children to stop talking and they'd want to talk over each other. So we finally had to say, okay, 5 seconds in your head, then you can start speaking. So, in conclusion, 3 things to remember about being a good listener. 1, always give people your full attention, no matter how you're feeling about what they're talking about. 2, give nonverbal clues such as a nod that you're listening. And 3, count to 5 in your head before you speak to make sure the person is done talking. All right, so the next 2 manners, I am going to combine them since they really overlap. So table and restaurant manners. All right, so if you are dining at home or at a restaurant and have a rectangular table, the hostess is going to sit at one side of the table. So the hostess is usually the lady of the house. The host, which is traditionally a male, sits at the opposite end. Let's say that they're all males at the table, then follow the lead of the host. So if you're a guest at someone's house or a guest of another family at a restaurant, wait and ask where you should sit. Just don't assume, just don't go sit down and plop yourself down. You need to wait. And you don't sit until the hostess sits or until you are told to sit. If a female is sitting next to a male, traditional etiquette says that the male pulls her chair out and helps her get seated. If there are not ladies present, once again, follow the lead of the host. You don't need to take anyone's chair out unless you feel like they really need assistance. Maybe they're elderly or disabled. But the male-female rules these days, it's just about common sense. If you think someone needs help, please help them. That's the right thing to do. All right, so the first thing you do when you sit down is you put your napkin on your lap. And there are 3 ways that you can be served food. First, buffet style. You go through a line, you put the food that you want on your plate, and then you walk your plate of food to your seat. Second one is family style. Platters of food with serving utensils are put on the table. So a utensil is a fork, knife, or spoon. A serving utensil is sort of an oversized fork, knife, or spoon. So after the hostess sits, she'll start passing the food around counterclockwise. So think of a clock goes this way, you're going to pass it around this way. So you take the platter, put some food on your plate, then you pass it to the next person counterclockwise. That way the food isn't going in 2 different directions and bumping into each other. Also, it's a nice thing to hold a plate for someone so they can get their food out. All right, the third is plated. Food is brought to you out on a plate. In any situation, including people getting back to the table from a buffet, you do not start eating until everyone is back at the table with his or her food, and the hostess takes her first bite. If it's all men, it's a host. All right, so when at a restaurant, you're gonna sit down, the server, once again, don't sit until they tell you where to sit, whoever the adults are. The server takes your drink order. You're going to speak in a clear and articulate voice. The server is then going to take your food order when he or she comes back. And you're going to give back the menu after you order, and you're going to say thank you to the server. So adults, I want you to practice with your children that they, when they go to a restaurant, that they're really focused. I don't want any phones at the table. Sorry, no devices. And I want them to look the server in the eye and say what they'd like to eat with a please and a thank you. Then they're going to hand over their menu and say thank you. All right, other things to remember: use a low voice when speaking in a restaurant. When your food arrives, say thank you to the server. If one person's food doesn't arrive, then that person can give everyone permission to begin eating. And it's sort of nice to offer to share your food with the person who doesn't have his food yet until his food arrives. And if they say you can eat, feel free to go ahead and eat. In the case of eating at home or a restaurant, you don't take your first bite until, what I already say, the hostess takes her first bite. If there's not an official hostess, let's say you're just, among peers, I always just sort of look around the table and say, does everyone have their food? Okay, then I think we can begin. So for the rest of this topic, I'm going to leave this detailed placemat on the screen. So this is a placemat that we use in a lot of our classes. On one side, it's a simple place setting, which would just be the fork, knife, spoon, and napkin, and like one glass. But then on the other side, it's sort of like a cheat sheet, like a set the table placemat, has this detailed place setting. So I thought that I would leave this up so you can sort of look at it while you listen. So if you ever feel overwhelmed by the number of utensils, remember to start on the outside and work your way in. If you don't like the food being served, just take one bite to sort of look like you're eating. I always say, look engaged with your food, like you don't hate it. So also be aware if you chew with your mouth open or smack your food. Obviously, never talk with food in your mouth. As I said before, you're going to pass the food counterclockwise. And as we mentioned in the conversation lesson, an appropriate conversation wouldn't include politics or religion. No off-color jokes either. And if you have to get up from the table for any reason during the meal, where does your napkin go? It goes on your chair. Starts out on your lap, then it goes in your chair if you're just getting up for a moment. Now, back to this traditional manners thing. It's a sign of respect. If a female gets up, traditionally males stand when she leaves, and then they sit down again when she returns. So when using butter for your bread, you're going to put butter from the butter dish on the side of your plate. Excuse me. So you're going to get that little butter knife. You're going to take it. You're going to put it on the side of your plate. If you have a butter plate, which is, a bread plate, which is in the drawing on the placemat, as you can see, you're going to put that on there. You might have your own little butter knife, but traditionally you don't. So you're going to use your regular knife, but you're just going to take a little bit of the bread. You're going to get your own personal knife, put on the butter, and then you're going to eat it that way. You never just want to spread the whole thing on there. Jam, jelly, same thing. You're not, if you have some kind of roll or biscuit, you don't put it in half and then butter or put jelly or something on the whole thing. Also, you're going to rest in between bites by putting down your utensils. So you don't want to just wave around your fork or keep it in your hand. Do not nibble food. Watch the volume of your voice. If you're asked to pass the salt or pepper, then pass both. They're never separated. Also, do not pick your teeth at the table. Fingers, toothpick, nothing. I was horrified. I had someone even older than me I was out to lunch with, and she knows what I do for a living. She had a straw the whole time and was like on her teeth. It was very odd. So you don't want to do that. All right. So you're at a restaurant. When the server comes to check on you, Always stop eating and make contact with him or her. If someone you know stops by your table to say hello, once again, everyone at the table needs to stop eating. You then introduce the person to everyone. If you don't know the visitor, be sure to stand and shake hands when being introduced. If you are a visitor at someone's table, make it brief so they can enjoy their meal. There's nothing worse than someone just sitting there and talking and no one's eating and just sort of looking at the person. If that ever happens and they go on and on, I always say, would you like to sit down with us? Can we get you something to eat? But that should hopefully give them the hint, oh, I'm taking up too much time. Go back to my chair. All right, so when your adult receives the check, stay quiet so they can really focus on the bill. Also, it's rude to say, well, how much was dinner? You don't want to ask that. Also, the amount of tip you should leave is 15 to 20% if you think you got good service, 15 to 20%. At the end of the meal in a home or restaurant, when it's time to leave, once you stand up, you are not allowed to eat or drink anything else. Never wad up your napkin, place it folded to the left side of your plate when leaving the table. And then you're going to walk out quietly and thank the host or hostess when you leave. Before you even get up from the table, or at least after, always thank the person who cooked the meal if you're at a home, even if it's your parents. And when you're out to dinner or lunch or whatever meal, definitely always thank the person who paid for it. That's very appreciated. Every single time you should say thank you. And if you're a guest at someone's house, you can offer to clear the table. All right, so in conclusion, 3 things to remember for table manners. Focus on the hostess, have correct utensil use, thank the person who cooked the meal from you. And if you're interested in getting a copy of this place setting, please let me know. I will give you a chance at the end to take down my email, and you not only can ask questions, but you can request something like this. All right, in conclusion, 3 things to remember about restaurant manners. Follow the lead of the table's hostess or host if it's all men. Stop eating whenever the server or a guest stop by the table. The tip should be 15 to 20% for good service. All right, moving along, electronic device etiquette. So having an electronic device such as a phone, tablet, or video is a privilege. So a lot of children and adults get distracted on their device and forget that other people are around. So here are things to remember when you have an electronic device. So 1, when you're with other people, put your device away and try to forget about it. 2, if your parents say that you can use your device, still be aware that someone may be talking to you. 3, when someone does start talking to you, put your device aside and give the person your full attention. I know you might think that's not so rude, but adults really think that it's rude. Also, 4, it's okay to not answer a text, email, or FaceTime right away. You can get back to the person the next time you're alone or when your parent says that you can. So there are times that looking at a screen, it's considered rude or inappropriate. All right, so here are some times when you're speaking on the telephone to an adult. So, maybe you're playing your video game and you're talking to your grandmother or grandfather, and you're like, they're fine. Well, no, they can hear when you're on the phone. So let's say that I'm talking to a client, for example. I always tell them, oh, I'm taking notes on my computer because I don't want them to think I'm just ignoring them when they hear the clicking. Eating, I mean, they can hear everything over the phone. 2, you don't want to be on a screen when you're supposed to be in bed asleep. So many people are losing sleep because they're on their device. So don't be that person. You don't want your device during a mealtime, at a restaurant, in a place of worship, at a wedding, a movie. Especially, I know you go to movies, or I assume you go to movies, or you've been to a movie, but there's nothing worse than someone on their electronic device. You don't want to do that. A play, ballet, symphony, opera, so some kind of cultural event, any kind of formal program or event. Electronic devices need to be put away. All right, so this leads us to our last topic, which is email. So most people do not email as much as text until they're in the workforce. However, it's more appropriate to email teachers than it is to text them. And learning how to send a good email is a great habit to get into. So several years ago, CNN reported that college professors were complaining that college students are too casual when sending emails. So writing an email is like writing a formal letter or note. So when you're sending an email, here are some things to remember. Do not use text speak, meaning do not use abbreviated words. Spell out all words and use correct punctuation. As I said, write an email the way you would a formal letter or a thank you note. And if you don't know how to write one of those, then once again, contact me and we'll have a conversation about it, or I'll send you some information. Make sure the tone of your email will be taken the way it's intended. So talking about tone, has your mom ever said, I don't like the tone of your voice? Well, she means you sound rude, even when you don't mean to. So I have a son who would always say, I'm not having a bad tone. I'm not meaning to be rude. Okay, well, that's fine, but let's try it again, because to me, you sound rude. Emails have the issue that the receiver of the email may not understand that you're not trying to sound angry or mean. So since you're not speaking to the person face to face, the person may take your words the wrong way and get angry or hurt feelings. So always read your email out loud, ask someone else to look at it, even if you think there's a small chance that someone might be offended by what you write to them. And especially as a student, I'd ask your parent for a while to look over email to make sure you have correct spelling, grammar, and a good tone. So what does CC mean on an email? It literally means carbon copy. So before copiers and personal computers and computer printers, if you wanted 2 or 3 copies of a form, you'd stack the paper and put something called carbon paper in between the papers. The carbon paper would allow you to have a copy of the form filled out. Some businesses still do use carbon paper. It's not very often, but they do. So on an email, CC means I can send an email to my friend Sarah, and let's say I want my friend Jason to see it. CC means I'm copying Jason on the email. Sarah can see that I'm letting him know the information too. So what does BCC mean on an email? It means I can send an email to my teacher, Mrs. Smith, and I want my mom to see it, but I don't want Mrs. Smith to know that I'm letting my mom see it. So that's what BCC means. So why would you BCC someone on email? I might do this because your mom, needs a copy of the email or wants to make sure that you send it, but once again, doesn't want your teacher to know that she's involved in the email sending process. That way you look responsible without your mom being involved, even though she is. And then eventually someday she'll say, oh yeah, I trust you. Don't worry about it. So how fast should you answer an email? Well, 24 hours is acceptable. When you go to college, they'll send you a lot of emails, and this will get you in a good habit of checking them, because in business, you use email all the time. And even high school, some high schools will say, email me. You probably do not want to text a teacher unless they invite you to. Typically, a business transaction, and that includes a teacher-student relationship, you need to use email. So what do you do if someone sends you a rude email? And it will happen someday. Well, I always say pick up the phone and resolve the issue. That's probably the easiest. You should follow up on an email saying you're glad you resolved the issue and summarize how it was solved, especially if anyone's copied on the email. So something that I had happen to me is I was in a volunteer job, and all these people were copied on this email. A person was accusing me of not doing my volunteer job. So I went on to explain how I did it, et cetera, et cetera. And it was one of those situations where it would have been faster if I just picked up the phone. However, all these people were on there. It was a heated exchange, and I needed everyone to see, this is my side of the story. This is what happened. So if you ever get in that kind of situation, definitely consult an adult, because it's just a really tricky thing to be involved in. So you might be thinking, okay, so why would I send another email if we resolve on the phone? Once again, you just have to be very careful. Also, if something is in writing, it can be used against you in a bad way. So in my case, it was a good thing that I was defending myself. If I would have been rude to the person, then she could have forwarded it to a zillion people and said, oh, look at this Elise McVeigh. She's so rude. And You always want the proof that you've resolved the issue just in case you need it. So a follow-up polite email is a good thing to do as well. And let me tell you the end of that story. I ended up running into this person at a party, and months later, and I'd never met her before, and she said, "Hi, Elise, I am so and so." I'm like, oh my God, the lady from the email. And I thought, thank God I was polite, because if I wasn't, this would be a very uncomfortable moment at this party, and who knows if she would have gone on to tell anyone. All right, so reply all. What is reply all? Well, you need to be very careful. Sometimes people think they're only replying to the sender, but they are replying to everyone. So what are some reasons that you only reply to the sender and not the people copied on the email? Well, when you have something confidential to say, you just have to be very careful. Once again, emails are just very, very tricky. When everyone on the email doesn't need to know the information that you're sending. So, for example, I'm sending out an email to the parents of the students who are in my manners classes. I might say, I'll be serving lunch. Please let me know if your child would prefer a turkey or ham sandwich. No one needs to know that information but me. So Jane Doe doesn't need to say, well, my child loves turkey and has allergies, so make sure you don't give her this, this, and this. Only I need to know that. The whole group does not need to know that. Also, when you're looking on your phone, which is small, scrolling up and looking at a zillion replies is not fun. So be very careful of replying all or not replying all. And it's actually considered rude to reply all when everyone does not need the information. Also, if you ever need to send an email to a group of people, like that example, let's say that, a group of parents sending their children to a manners class, in the to on the email, you send it to yourself. You then BCC all the people so that they only see your email and no one else's, because two reasons. So why would I send it myself? First is for confidentiality. I don't have the permission from all the parents to give out their email. So if anyone ever says to you, oh, can I have so-and-so's email? Say, you know what, I need to ask them first. And that can be for any information, for a text, for anything. They might not know other parents of the students in the class. They don't want strangers to have their email, just like you wouldn't give out someone's home address. You don't know if the person knows this person doesn't know the person. Or let's say that your friend says, oh, I like your other friend so-and-so, can I get their information? No, you need to ask permission. Also, if you read an email on your phone and see all those emails, as I said, it's a pain to scroll down to get to the message. So on iPhones, you now have the option of hiding the email addresses, but it's still considered rude to show all the emails. All right, so why is it sometimes better to forward an email to someone than putting their email in BCC? And once again, I'm sorry if this sounds very tedious, especially since you may not use email yet, but I promise you the time is coming. So I want you to remember this. So the person you BCC may reply all, and the original person you email may see the response. So this happened to me one time. I BCC'd a relative on an email in response to a business situation. She replied all, and the business people saw that I shared it with her. It was very embarrassing. So please be very careful about that. So in conclusion, 3 things to remember about email etiquette. Do not put anything in an email that would be uncomfortable having other people, other than the recipient of the email, read it. Use full and formal sentences, and be careful about blind copying people. These are really important things. All right, so I've given you 8 different manners that you should know. So parents, if you think you can take it from here, great. If not, let me help you. Let me partner with you to help set your child up for success. So I'm including in the chat a link in my calendar so you can set up a complimentary consultation, throw any issue at me, and believe me, I've heard it or seen it. And once again, students, why do you need to know good manners? I mean, I hope that this was not such a dreadful presentation, that you got something out of it. But you need to, once again, have good manners, because if you don't, you're not going to get invited on to hang out with your friends at their houses. If you have good manners, a teacher will like you more. If a teacher likes me, and I'm about to fail a class, or let's say that I am this close to getting an A in a class, they will bump you up. If you are disrespectful, you don't look them in the eye, you talk back, you sound like you have a bad tone, they're not going to want to help you. People like people who have good manners. Your grandparents are going to love you more. Your parents are going to appreciate you more. Your brothers and sisters, just be polite to them. I know that you're thinking, oh, they're such a beat down. I can't stand my brother or sister right now. I understand. I have a sibling. I have 3 sons who, they don't like each other all the time. But if you can be polite, you will be so much more successful in life. I promise you. That's the one thing that you get out of this. Please remember, polite people get ahead in life. Rude people do not. So you can take advantage of our free or affordable resources. We have a YouTube channel called the Mrs. McVeigh's Magnificent Manners Show. It has entertaining videos. So we have some funny characters who are probably a little younger, or they're a little young maybe for you, but you will think that it's funny. And we also have my 2 dogs, Dax and Ashton. They're very cute little dogs. I found an app where I make them talk and they give manners tips. So that's a lot of fun. So you should check them out. Once again, even if you think you're too old, too cool for it, even adults think it's funny. Also, we offer private and group classes all over the world. Just let me know what you need. Also, we have Monday and Thursday noon Central Time, Instagram Lives, Facebook around 12:15. I give, on Mondays, we have manners themes of the week. So I give questions that parents can ask their children. We also talk about things that relate to adults. Even so, we have like 65 different topics in our curriculum from age 3 through adult. And I make the situation apply whoever the audience is on these Instagram and Facebook Lives. So I do the one thing on Instagram, then I repeat it again in case you're only on Facebook around 12:15 Central Time. Then Thursdays, so I used to write a column for the Dallas Morning News, and I've sort of brought that to life where I have a reader's or a viewer's question, and then I give the answer. So it's a lot of fun. Also, feel free to link it to me with Elise McVeigh. I'd love to get to know you better. And if you decide to schedule something with me in the next 24 hours, mention that you've seen this presentation. I'll give you a discount if you decide to take advantage of one of our paid resources. So as I said, we offer classes to children as young as 3 through adults. And we reiterate the information in all these different ways through age-appropriate workbooks, worksheets, videos. I promise you, we make it a lot of fun. So thank you, everyone, for such a great webinar. I hope you learned a lot, enjoyed this as much as I did. I'd love to connect with you again soon. And for younger kids, we have the Mrs. McVeigh's Magnificent Manners Show video series. We have private and semi-private Zoom classes for kids and adults. And I also do one-on-one problem-solving sessions for parents. Once again, I'm giving you a link to my calendar in the chat. And if you have any questions, they can be specific about the presentation that you're looking for, something with table manners or more clarification on something, or you give me a scenario, whatever it is. I put my email in the chat and I would love to connect with you. So thank you so much. And I look forward to working with you or seeing you at some point. Thank you.